Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome. I think we're on about a day 8 of the 100-day challenge here. I was ill for a couple days, so I had to halt my 100-day challenge, but I'm picking back up where I left off. Some kind of bug's been going around, and I had probably a touch of the flu or something. I'm not sure exactly what. But I'm back in the craft room today. Forgive the scratchy voice, but that's what happens when you're not feeling well. But today, I just want to come along and do something simple with you. I'm just going to paint some book pages. I have a couple that, well, I guess I only have, nope, there's one. I don't know what happened to the other one I had here a few minutes ago, but somewhere I have another one. This one was painted with an acrylic paint pen. You could see how on the back, you could see some areas, see how they're kind of shiny and some aren't. But if you turn it over and use this as the outside, it actually, I like how that looks. That's a pretty cool color. So that's one way you could paint your pages, or with markers or acrylic paint pens. You could also use paints, like watercolor paints. I have some of those today, some metallic watercolors. I also have tried using Sharpies to see what would happen if I just took a Sharpie and colored on a book page. And this is what came out. I had a very pastel blue Sharpie. Here it is somewhere, hidden on my desk if I can get to it here. This is the blue Sharpie that I use to do this page. And I brought these two along. I'm not going to use Sharpies today or paint markers. However, I am going to use my paintbrush and just apply some water to these. And see, I mean, these are completely dry. They've been dry for several days. I have been ill since the end of last week. So they've been dry for several days. So we'll see what adding a little bit of plain water will do to them. The, both, I don't know. I mean, these are permanent markers, and this is acrylic paint. So I'm not sure water's going to do much of anything to it. But being paper and different fibers, it might. So I thought I'd try something there. And then I just have random book pages here that I'm going to just do some painting on and show you how I dye them with my ink pads. I also have some pieces of a Dr. Seuss book that was falling apart. And I'm just going to try coloring the backs so I could use them maybe for backing tags or to make pieces of ephemera out of. I'm doing a journal for a boy, as I mentioned in previous videos. So I thought I'd bring you along and we'll see what we can come up with here just to get some different color pages and some different things that we can use as bases to make some stuff out of for this journal that I'm working on. Plus, it's another simple way you could just dye your pages. I have paintbrushes out. I may use them, but I also have some wipes that are cut in half that I might pull some from my wiping container when I go to use ink pads and do that. But for now, I'm just going to start out and put some water down. I don't care that these other pages are underneath here, because if they get some runoff from it, that's fine. I just want to see if water is going to do anything. And my answer on this is, all it's going to do is simply wrinkle my page up, because that's not doing anything. That's completely dry. I'm going to probably get the same result with this acrylic paint pen that I use. I really don't think this is going to bleed much, maybe a little, but I really highly doubt it. In fact, I got some water on here. Let's just turn it over and see what happens if any of the paint will, see, I didn't even get any paint, no blue residue. So these two are colored as they are, and I'll end up using them as they are, or they'll be used in some other partial project. So I'm just going to lay these two to the side. That experiment, now we know, does not work. So once you've dried your pages, you've got what you've got, folks. Or if you use any kind of a permanent coloring system. So, knowing all of this, I think what I'm going to do is just start out with my metallic paints and put some paint down and see what we can come up with. I am going to kind of stick with the color theme that I'm using for the current journal I'm working on, but I may do some others just to have them on hand while I have my paints out. I have not painted for years, you folks. If you like to do actual painting, you could simply get you some watercolor paints, paint on your book pages, use those for your paper, and then you have a bunch of bases you can use for making things. Now, I'm not getting a lot of paint off of that for it to be to painting with a paintbrush. I know these are metallic, but I'd like to be getting a little more paint out of here than that. So let me see if I get more water in there, if that'll help loosen the paint up. Hadn't been that long ago that I bought these, within the last 6 months, but I would think that that wouldn't have anything to do with it. Because if the one, I mean, with watercolors, once you add water, if there's pigment there, you're going to get color. And this does have a little bit of a metallic, glitter-like look to it, so I'm hoping I can kind of accomplish that on my paper as well. But I'm sure not getting anywhere using this large paintbrush very quickly. So I'm not patient enough to do this slowly. I want to see what we're going to get. So I'm going to get a cloth out, because the cloth will absorb more paint at one time, and it might be a lot easier for me to get some ink down on this paper. These aren't like soaked wipes. They are damp, but if I were to use them like to clean my hands or surface, I'd probably have to squirt some water on them. So I'm going to get a couple out here. They're just wipes I've cut in pieces and put them in this little container so I could have them, you know, at the ready at my desk if I needed a little wipe. It's good to keep wipies around for glue on your fingers and paint on your fingers and just whatever. But we're going to use them as our transfer agent with this paint today. Let's see if I can get more ink onto the paper. I have a cup of water here. Let me just add a little water on top of that and let it sit for a minute too while I'm using what I got on my cloth, and see how that goes. If we don't get a lot of success here with this particular paint, we'll move on to my ink pads. You can see I've got a lot of blue ones laying out. Some old ones. They might be a little dry, but I'm pretty sure I can spruce those babies up once I get wet. I'm pretty sure they will spruce up. My paint's working a little better once I, let the water really soak in there. I think that's what I needed. See, now I'm getting a lot more color off there. So let's see. Put it on here, it looks more aqua. So let's see what it does on paper. Maybe it'll just give it the light enough blue that'll be kind of neat to use as a backing on something. Got something stuck to my paper there, most likely glue. So there, that's letting me transfer some of that blue. It's kind of hard to see, but it is giving my paper a blue tinge. So really, folks, you can get whatever. I mean, you could be doing coloring paper with makeup if you want. If you have pretty eyeshadows that you like, they have a lot of glitter and sparkle. You can use your makeup to color your papers. Shoe polish, dyes, Easter egg dye. People will use Easter egg dye to paint color on their paper. So really, there's just lots of different ways you could do that. I just thought, since this was my first day back from not having a very pleasant and an ill weekend, that I would just kind of take it easy and color some paper that then I could use to make ephemera pieces out of. So I may even keep this white when I'm done, because it'll be dyed this color and it might look pretty cool. And I'm not going to worry too much if I transfer inks from one paper to another, because I'm using all in the same color spectrum. So that's not bad. I mean, if you compare it, this is the paper that it was to begin with, and there's what I got from adding my blue paint, just enough to color my paper, not to paint anything particular. I could come back and let this dry, come back and do flowers on it if I wanted. But I'm simply dyeing papers with it today. So let's lay my paints out of the way and see what happens with some of my inks. This is an old ink pad I've had for quite some time. It is Ranger Adirondack Lights. It's the Ranger line, which makes the same distress oxides that everyone uses. But I had these from my card making days. So let me give a few squirts to it and see what happens. We'll get some ink off here and see what we can do with it. I'm going to go ahead and squirt this other one. It's a little on the darker side, but again, we're going to try it. Might as well let it soak for a minute while I'm... Set that one up a little bit so I don't end up dumping them from the desk. Set the water down so I only have one hand. Now I have two hands, not just one to work with. It was kind of wanting to stick. So let's give this one a couple squirts. It might be too dark, but even if I do a book page, I can still use pieces of it. And yeah, it definitely has ink. It just got ink all over my finger. So I have these from my card making days. Bought them, but I don't know that I used them that much. I will go ahead and put the lid back on the denim so I don't get my colors confused here. And lay that one to the side. And I'm going to start with the first one that I did because it should be nice and inked up, colored up, ink ready to go, whatever you want to say. So I'm just going to use my cloth as my transfer brush or whatever you might want to call it. And I'm just going to rub the ink on the paper. Again, it's coming out a little light. I'm okay with that. Probably the paper I use. And that's supposed to be a cloudy blue. It's not, this particular blue is not supposed to be dark, dark. It's coming off about that color on my rag, but it is a very light blue when you put it on the paper. But you can see it, I think, a little bit better than the other. Now that this one is drying a little more, it's a little more obvious. They look very similar when they're drying, but this one's gone down a little bit darker, I think. See what we can do here. So today, guys, want to do something in your craft room and you really don't know what you want to create, just get you an old book or an old notebook that your kids have that they used last year that they never used up, or really any paper you have. Newspaper, if you've got newspapers. And then just get you a few pages of it and just pull out some inks if you have them, or markers, or something you can put some color down on the page with and just start coloring you some pages. Really doesn't take a lot to do this. Now we're going to experiment, however, and we're going to see what happens if we would just, I've already squirted this, so this ink pad technically should be saturated, so let's just press it down here and see what we get on my paper. Okay, it's coming out a little darker, but I like it. So let's just see if we can color the whole page this color blue and see what we come up with. I'm not too worried about using these inks up because, like I said, I've had them for quite some time. Now, some of the pieces of paper are pulling out a little bit darker, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. It's just a matter of what paper you're using and how it absorbs your inks. Everyone, you could go buy the exact same ink, and if you didn't have the same paper, it's going to turn out differently for you. So we'll do one in this cloudy blue, and then I think I'll come along and try the denim, see what we get with it. But I don't even know if these ink pads are still on the market. I'll be honest, I didn't look. I don't know. It just is use what you've got. Use whatever you, and if you don't have ink pads, you can buy fairly cheap ones. I think they even have them at the dollar store, to be honest. So just try different things and see how it turns out. Kind of like how that one has some speckledy look, so I'm going to leave that one as is. But that's with my cloudy blue Ranger Adirondack light one. So we're going to lay it to the side to dry. And this one, I have all these blue swatches on here. I think I'm just going to keep using it, and we'll see how it turns out in the end then with all the different blues on it. All right, let's try the denim and see what we get. You might get a different effect too if you use your ink pads and a paintbrush, perhaps. Don't know. Not tried it, so I'm not really sure what you might get. So we're really going to saturate this one. Much darker going on my cloth. Let's see what it does on the paper. Oh yeah, a lot darker, but you're getting a lot more ink for it. The more water you add, the lighter it can become. But I love that dark color. I'm getting a little bit of a reflection, but there you go. It's a little bit easier to see when I hold it down so that I'm not getting a reflection. So we're just going to finish putting this on here. There's probably enough on the rag. Of course, if you don't want to get paint all over your hands when you're doing it like this, you probably should wear gloves, but I don't. My own fault. I get paint all over me, I get paint all over me. It all washes. And it's just evidence of being in my craft room, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm going to go ahead and put some more water down here where I had all the extra ink and just kind of do a little white, maybe pick up some of that extra ink that I can use on the other end so it's not quite as dark. Put my little one underneath a little bit so that get that ink that's going over onto it. Get a little bit more of that. I probably have enough here to do this whole page. And I think I'm going to go ahead and do it because what it's doing, if I do this right, I'll show you. I'm getting kind of an ombre where it goes dark and then gets lighter as I go down the page. Only I'm not real happy with how that section turned out here. Let's see. I am going to get just a tiny bit more here. I don't think we're going to turn it upside down and use it like we did the other one, because I think it's going to be too dark to do that with. I mean, I can try it on a small piece of paper, but that one kind of gave me almost like an ombre effect. Dark and a different blue here, but see, that's the same blue. It's just a matter of differences in water. And I can come back and do whatever I want to it. I mean, it's paper. If I mess this up, the only thing I'm out of, the little bit of ink that got put on it. Because I had tons and tons of book pages. We've got books around here that people are throwing out daily, on a daily basis, because people don't want them. So if you get books that are falling apart, I just can't see how that's... Now, I really like how that's going down. Look at that. We haven't even added any more ink to it. You know, just a little bits. Letting me do this whole thing. And probably if I added a little more water to it, I'd get more out of here. So, I'm not even going to try re-inking. I'm just going to put this down. Trying not to have my lined patterns. So, I'm just going to try working some of those lines out there. It's starting to get a line. I don't want a line in it. Okay, just going to dip you in some ink here, and then we're going to try a couple of the Distress Oxides, the Ranger Distress Oxides, which I'm not sure. I believe these are the ones that Tim Holtz design, coloring and names and things like that, but I don't know how all that works, folks. I really don't mean to be disrespectful to him or to anyone in the designing field. I just don't know how it works. I'm ignorant to that kind of stuff. I just like to play with it when it comes out. So, here we are, playing in the craft room, making pages, and we will come back. And so now I've got a couple of these pages that size. Then I have, let's see here, let me get the denim out of the way because I want to see how the other inks do. I've got Stormy Sky, and I have what else do I have here? Stormy Sky and what is it? Broken China. Sorry, my mind went blank there for a minute. Here's all the ones we've done thus far. I want to get one of these others. It's got a little bit of a shininess to it. So I wanted to kind of see how it would ink up. This is from one of those school books that's kind of a little bit shiny. Let's see how it takes to the ink and go from there. I've never tried this either with magazines. So let's see. Okay. Didn't even have to put any more ink on it. And look, it's giving me a light blue without any effort at all. I think when I go to use the other two inks, I'm going to get me a new cloth. That way I don't contaminate my Distress Oxides. And sorry if I'm getting crinkling. I've got some wax paper down to protect my surface here. I don't have a glass mat that I can work on. Glass mat for me would be far too heavy if I had to move it, and to have to put it on and off my desk would be just way too difficult for me, so I don't mess with it. I use just a piece of wax paper. Alright, so I'm guessing when we turn this over, we're not going to get much color on the other side. Nope. So if you color these kinds of pages, you're going to get one-sided coloring, and if you want the color on the other side, you're just going to turn it over and color away because it can't soak through this. I didn't think it would, but I just wanted to give a shot and see what we, since it's it's kind of coated, I think. They put something on the paper to give it that texture and things so that it will last longer for textbooks. So, alrighty. Now, I think my overshot piece here is looking pretty cool about now. So we're going to just keep it under there. Alright, let's see. Let's pull out these Distress Oxides up here. And if this wax paper keeps doing this, guess what? Forgive me, we're getting rid of the wax paper. Too much noise. Alrighty, now let's try this without the wax paper. I just got to clear my work area here, and let's see what we get with a little bit of my Distress Oxides. This one is Stormy Sky. And I know these ink pads still are quite saturated because I haven't used the blues that much since I've started making journals, and I haven't had these for a very long time. So I'm just going to wet my cloth a little in my cup of water. Then I'm going to pull some ink off this ink pad. And we're going to put her on the paper and see what we come up with. I would venture this is going to be a lighter colored blue, but we'll see. Kind of a blue-gray, isn't it? I like it. I do like this on paper. Yeah, I think this is my favorite color-wise that we've done so far. Let's try this technique with this one and see what we get. Just going to press down a bit. Just get some ink on that paper. And then I'm going to take my cloth and try to spread out some of the ink that I have here. While it's still good. Oh yeah, spreads really good if you do that. You can even tell that you did it that way. So if you want to ink your paper, get your hands a little bit messy in the process, try some different techniques. So this would be the way to go. Doesn't take a lot. Doesn't really make that much of a mess if you're not as messy as I am. You don't have like lots of water. You just gotta let your pages dry when you're done putting the ink on them. And I'm betting this one, unlike the other, it's going to go through too. Not quite as much because I didn't put as much ink on it, but you can definitely see how it's starting to go through absorbing through the paper. I'm just going to do one side for now for the sake of simplicity. And let's see what, I'll use this other side here and see what, I'm using oxide to oxide, so I don't mind doing that. I just don't want to contaminate inks with oxides or oxides with inks. I don't mind color-wise. If it's a blue, it's a blue. I'm not going to put pink and blue together, but let's see what we get with the bright blue. I didn't even squirt this one, and look, I'm still getting quite a bit of ink off of it. There's this color. Let's see. It's going to be a lot brighter, I think. Yep. I figured that because I've used the broken china and done this method previously with it. So I know what results I'll get from it. Let's try my squirt bottle. There it is. So I hope everybody's going to get some nice, I hope you're in an area where you're going to get some nice pretty weather this week. We're in the Mid-Ohio Valley here, and we're expecting up into the 60s today. Next couple days is supposed to be real nice, and then of course the weekend, and then it's going to rain, but during the week, this week, it's supposed to be nice. Let's just rub some paint on here, and then we'll use my cloth to spread her out and see how that works. Ah! Really going to have to put the water on there to get those lines, get the lines off there, but that's not a problem. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to get some more paint on here, and then I think I'll come back through and just paint over it with my water and see how that does. I hope y'all get your book pages out, your papers, get some of your inks out. Just because you don't have watercolors doesn't mean you can't try doing some painting with your ink pads. It's doable. It's just a different medium of ink, I suppose you might say. All right, let's get a little more ink on the bottom and up here on the corner, and then I'll take my brush to it. There we go. All right, I'm just going to take my brush, a wet brush, and just simply go over top of it and see what we get. Now, if you wanted to add a color to this, I would let this dry before you added any other colors. That's kind of helping to get rid of some of those lines and moving my color around a little bit differently. But I want to saturate the whole page with it and see what. In the past, when I have put more color on these, which I probably will do with this one, it has dyed it completely blue without any issue at all with the broken china. So, but I did it when my ink pads were brand new too. It will use up more of your ink pad in this way, but still works. You're going to use the ink up whether you put it on paper this way or whether you ink the sides with it. So no matter what you do, you're going to use up your ink pads. But one ink pad should last you quite some time. I like this color I'm getting right here in the corners. I'm just going to go ahead and color this one all the way that color. Just keep taking it off the edge of my ink pad there and putting her down on here. If I need to, I'll wet my brush again. So if you've tried painting, please leave me a picture. You can also send me a message and I can post it. I don't know if I allow posting on my Facebook page at this time. It is open to the public. I'm not sure if you can post on it. I'll have to check into that. But I'd like to see what you do when you dye your papers. So, please comment. Let me know what you've tried, simple methods for dyeing paper. I've mentioned quite a few in my video. Let me know what ones you've tried and what ones you like or prefer. You don't have to just dye all your papers with coffee and make them all brown. You can add some little bit of color here and there. And add a little bit of color and a pop of color in your journal now and then. Even with if you like a grungy look, a pop of blue, red, or some of the primary colors I think really look neat in the journals with the vintage looking color. They may not have had colored photographs, colored pictures, but I'm sure they had color in their lives just as well as anybody else. They just had to figure out how to dye things and make the dyes work for what they wanted at that time. The beauty is we have all these supplies we can use to get the effects we want, but you can use if it works for you, there's no right or wrong way to use things unless you're destroying the product in the process. And adding water in a paintbrush for your ink pads is not going to destroy your ink pad. Yeah, you get a little bit more color when you use the brush. For some reason with the oxides, we're getting a lot more color on here that way. About halfway done with this page here, so let me add a little more here. Everywhere I need a little extra color, I'm just going to add it in here. I can still try to get some out of the pad this way if I want it. And let's see what would happen if we just rubbed quite a bit on there and then go back with my brush and spread it. That works too, a lot quicker than a brush. And if you just rub it side to side, you're not going to get all those lines like I was getting. Check that out. And I'm probably venturing to guess that this is probably going through on the other side by now. I could be wrong, but let's just take some water now and come back in to these spots where I don't have a lot and just kind of see how the colors, once you add the water to it, how it kind of mutes the color and you get almost like a cloudy, chalky appearance. That's what the oxides do when you add the water to them a lot of times. It gives you that kind of cloudy look. So adding a little water to your oxides prior to inking with them will give you a little bit different look than if you don't. And look, it's just spread, the water just let that ink spread right out onto that page, didn't it? A little slower dyeing papers like this, but hey, I slow at everything I do. Alrighty, let's see. Oh yeah, that went right through that paper. That'll be pretty cool once that dries on the back as well. So we'll lay that one aside. All right, folks, it is now been 35 minutes. And thus far, I'm going to lay all the pages that we did out here so you could see them. This was the Stormy Sky page. This was the Broken China, and I really put the ink on with the Broken China. I can go back and add more to the stormy sky because this ink layers very well also. Okay, and then we had, let's see, this was the cloudy blue Adirondack ink. No, this was a denim. No, this was a cloudy blue. This was the denim. And I can't remember what color that was. And this was what we tried to do with just simply paints. I thought I had two. Oh, yeah, here's the other one of those. It came out like that. So, that's what I get when you try dyeing paints. That's what you get. Oh, yes, and then we had this large book page here. I'll come back, and once these are completely dry, I'll show you how you can make some things out of it. This one, as of now, has, nothing on the back. So I'll bring these back, and we will make some more things out of these blue book pages that I've made today. I said I was going to do some more colors, but the paint, I just didn't like how it turned out as well. So I'm not going to use it as a permanent way to color my paper, but I really like how this one turned out. I do like that, and I like this one as well. Those are probably my two favorite out of all of them. Anyway, you all have a wonderful afternoon, and I hope, even if you're not feeling well, that you'll get into your craft room, get some things dyed and colored, so that you can make things out of it. If you get some paper dye, come back and join me later this week and see what we can do with some dyed papers. Not just for journal pages anymore. You can make your ephemera out of your dyed papers as well. You might end up with blue fingers like me, but that's what happens when you dye paper. You'll have a good afternoon, and I'll see you in my next video.